Um, this is on? Yeah. So, yes, I am a missionary, but I am not a paid, hired by the Nazarene church missionary. So the WIF funds that he's talking about, I only get in the form of I have medical provided to me because I am a long-term volunteer missionary. So I am not paid as a regular missionary is who is hired by the church. So so my support comes from people who want to support me. I'm not paid, if that makes sense. We do have missionaries there who are paid. Gary and Penny Seidel, they've been there for 18 years. They've raised their family there. But I volunteered to go 5 years ago. At 19, I was raised in a non-Christian home. I came to know the Lord by accident, but we all know there are no accidents in God, right? So when I was 19, I felt like the Lord was calling me to Africa, but I had no idea how to get there, what I would do when I got there. So over the years, I followed everything that happened in Africa. I watched all those, National Geographic and the news and everything that was happening. And finally, I decided, I got married. I had 5 kids. I have 4 sons and a daughter. And I now have 2 grandchildren. After I'd been married about 25 years, I got divorced. So then I was raising kids by myself. And at 59, I thought, well, I missed it. I'm never going to Africa. I missed God's call on my life. I messed up. And at 60, I left for Africa. So we are never too old to have God move in our lives and take us to what he's called us to. I always joke and say, it took them 40 years in the desert, took me 42 years before I got to the promised land. But so I went to Africa 4 years ago. I am now starting into my 5th year now. I went as a volunteer so I could leave anytime, but I plan to stay for a year. So now I'm starting my 5th year. All right, you can start my slides. So that's kind of my little who I am. I work for the Africa Southeast Field. I work for Reverend Paul Matambo, who is the FSC Field Strategy Coordinator for Zambia, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. Most of what I do is office work, and I kind of take charge of all the conferences we have. A lot of what we do is for leadership training, for district superintendents, for pastors. So I don't get out into the lay people a lot, but we do touch base sometimes. And of course, the longer I'm there, the more people I get to know. This is my home church in Woodlands. It's one of the few Nazarene churches that speaks English, so that's why I attend there. I also do some little ministries on my own. It just kind of happened, and so I have little things that I do, and I'll speak about those as we go along. It's not moving forward. It should move forward every 10 seconds. We also have a little Bible college in Malawi. Every year in May, we have graduation there. So every year in May, I usually go to Malawi. Usually that's the only time I go to Malawi. I only go once a year. This last year was the first year I've made it to Zimbabwe. I haven't been there before. So now that I've made it there, all of the district superintendents are, you need to come, you need to speak at our churches. And I'm like, I'm not a pastor, you guys. You forget that. No, you can speak. So the first year I was there, they told me when I came home, you will do deputation. I said, okay, what's deputation? They said deputation is speaking at churches. And I said, oh no, I don't do that. So the first year was a lot of quaking and shaking, but I think I'm getting more comfortable being up here now. These are just some ladies. We don't have a lot of old people. People tend to not really live much past their 40s, 50s. If you're past 50, you're considered quite old. So you can see the difference of the very poor, a house for 4, and how the malls are decorated. These are some of my friends. Reverend Chisomo and his wife. Reverend Chisomo is our youth pastor at our church. He is very close to getting his doctorate in theology and graduating from Manchester in England. And he lives in a tiny little house with no running water. So you can see where priorities lie in their lives. This is one of our district superintendents, and this young man here is the first person I've ever led to the Lord. So that was kind of exciting for me. He asked me one day for a Bible, and I said yes, and I brought him a Bible a couple weeks later, and then I kept asking him what he was reading, and he really was reading it. And so then one day he asked me to pray with him. So I said, would you like to accept Jesus? And he said yes, and he came to know the Lord, and it's quite exciting for me. This is, once you're outside of Lusaka, which is the main city where I live, this is what you'll see. You'll see rural villages. Some of those rural villages will have those big things that bring electricity to your house, solar panels. They will have solar panels on top of their grass roof. So it's kind of funny. This is Evans, my buddy. He and his girlfriend have a little baby girl, and I'm trying very hard to keep their relationship solid so that they can get married and keep that little family together. So I buy him airtime every week because he's going to school quite a long distance away. This is my friend Caleb. Caleb came to know the Lord the first year I was there. He's now attending Bible college in Malawi. And I got to go help pick out the ring and be there when he asked his girlfriend to marry him at church. He asked her at church on a Sunday morning. It was kind of cool, I thought. It was very different. And everybody thought he was crazy, but he did it anyway. Her name is Bertha. She's a very sweet gal. Our young men have a really hard time getting married because to get married, you have to pay the bride price, which is set by the father. Then you have to pay for the whole wedding, the dress, everything. You pay for everything. This is my mom. If you're the male, the female, the wife, or the bride pays for nothing. So it's hard for them to get married. And if they just go down and get married at the city hall kind of place, that's not good enough. Then you're not married in the church, so you're not really married before God. So there's a lot of pressure on them. So we have a lot of young men that are not married that may have their girlfriend from forever with 2 or 3 kids, and how that's okay, I don't quite understand their reasoning. My mom came home with me last year, and she spent 6 weeks with me, and then I brought her back home. She's 86, so it was pretty exciting for her to come and see what I was doing. I have not tried any of these delicacies, and I don't plan to. This young lady, she was cleaning my house for a while, but now she's in school to be a nurse, and I'm helping her by buying her books for her. I just like this tree. I thought it was cool. This was when I was in Zimbabwe. In February, I had the awesome chance of going on a 2-week trip with our missionaries through South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, all the places I've never gone before. As a single person, I can't travel alone. So I usually take my buddy Lufus with me because he can help drive. But then keep up appearances, I have to take a third person. Well, that's all at my expense. So I don't go anywhere very much outside of town because that means I'm paying for both of their food, both of their lodging, and everything that happens. So I got to go through South Africa with them. I understand now why people want to move to South Africa. The land is absolutely beautiful. All of the trees you see there are all planted, and then they harvest them for paper. So none of their forests are natural. They're all planted. But it's beautiful, beautiful country. We went through Kruger Refuge I think we were there for 3 days, and I got to see animals that I never, ever would have otherwise seen because I wouldn't have gone that far. And it was a long trip, 2 weeks in a van, miles and miles every day, but it was a trip of a lifetime for me. I never would have been able to go otherwise. So all of these animal pictures, usually I don't have very many. This year I have lots, are mostly from Kruger. These were some hyenas, pups, that were wet, and they were not very happy. And they were sitting right on the side of the road, and I was worried that some car was going to come around the corner and just wipe them out. Those little monkeys are a real pain. You can't set anything down, they will take it. Everything has to be locked up at night. You can't leave anything anywhere. The male ostrich is the black and white. The females are brown. This was a different place. This isn't Kruger. This was more hands-on. This is Kruger. This is a kudu. They're about the size of an elk, and they have those curly horns. I thought they were really cool looking. The females don't have horns, just the males. You can see I really liked them. I took lots of pictures of them. This was a hippo at Livingstone. Livingstone is where the Victoria Falls are. And I wanted him to open his mouth. So I kept honking my horn because I've heard that when they open their mouths, that's signs of aggression. And so I kept honking my horn until he opened his mouth, and I got that picture. This is also at Livingstone. There is a small herd of rhino there. They're guarded 24/7. And the guards like to have their pictures taken with you, guns and everything. And they make jokes about how they are trained to run faster than all the tourists. This is back at that place where I said it's more hands-on. And I got to pet a giraffe. It wasn't anything like I thought it was going to be. They're very hard. This bluebird is absolutely beautiful in the sunlight. And its African name is go-away bird because it talks constantly and has the most annoying, horrible sound you've ever heard. But I guess its beauty makes up for its sound. These were some warthogs that came through where we were staying in the evenings. Some water buffalo. We didn't see very many of them. I was surprised. I thought we were going to see lots. We didn't see very many. This herd is actually from another place. It wasn't while we were at Kruger. We did see lots and lots and lots of elephant. And we took one tour with a guide, and the guide said because of pressure from the West, meaning America, that they have not done any culling of the herds since the 80s in Kruger. Consequently, the elephants are destroying all of the habitat in the Kruger Park. 3 animals are in danger of becoming extinct because their habitat's been destroyed by elephants. And we saw elephants every single day. We saw big bulls alone. We saw herds of females and young every day. And I began to realize what this guy was talking about, you know, that the elephant are a real problem in the Kruger Park. This is a place where, the only place we could go to see lion. They're in a pen of about 4 to 5 acres, and there were 3 pens for 3 different prides, and they're fed every day. They've never hunted in their whole life, but it was fun to see them up close. This is just a bug and a frog. I thought they were cool. The bug was dead, but it was still cool. This is a mama elephant and 3 little babies, and they were all rescued from poachers. And the mama, the big one, was raised by herself. And so then they decided to put the 3, after she'd been raised by herself for more than 10 years, they decided to bring the 3 and see if she would accept him, and she took him right. And now they all travel around together, and she's not lonely anymore, so that's kind of nice for her. These are wild dog or painted dog. And you never see them because they're very timid, very shy. But because we were at this one place, they had these two not herds, but whatever, 2 things of dogs on 4 acres also. This is again at Livingstone. The rhinos were very easy to get a picture with. They're not worried about you at all. This was in Botswana, and this is a very old bull, and his tusks were all broken. Once when we were in Livingstone, I took some Jesus Film crew to Livingstone. If you can just pause it here for a minute. And so it was nighttime. Lufus was driving, and there was a car ahead, so he dimmed his lights. And then he's like, what is that car doing? Because the lights were moving around kind of weird. And at the same time, both him and I went, elephant! And there was an elephant in the road. And because he had dimmed his lights, we didn't see the elephant. And the car we were wondering what he was doing, he was backing up. Well, we were already too close, so he just jammed on the gas and went zooming around him, and away we went. But as we zoomed around in the moonlight, I could see this massive head right with ears forward, which means they're angry, right in my window, and his trunk was raised, and that's as close as I ever want to be to a bull elephant. I'm telling you, he was huge. I was just like, I just couldn't believe it. And then you hear all these stories about the elephants flipping cars and sitting on them because they're angry, and I later told one of the guides about what had happened, and he said, you guys are really lucky. You could have all been killed. So you can pray for my safety. When I got back from taking my mom home in January, every year we have a cholera outbreak in Lusaka, but the cholera outbreak this year was horrendous, and thousands of people died. Cholera is a waterborne disease that is caused from fecal matter in the water. And so you have people living virtually on top of each other in these compounds, and all of them have an outdoor latrine dug. And so when the rains come and the water table comes up, what's in those latrines is going to come into their water, their drinking water. So we had this cholera outbreak, but it's not just the water. If I get cholera and I shake hands with you, I can pass it to you very easily. So it is waterborne in the beginning, but then it becomes passed. So the city of Lusaka literally shut down. We weren't allowed to go to church. There was no allowed groupings of people of more than 5 people. Weddings were canceled. Everything in the city was canceled. All the schools were closed. And so people weren't making any money. And then the people in leadership, the country came in with the army, and they literally bulldozed down all of the little places where people would shop, you know, the little vendors' boxes that they build with just sticks. And they sell some tomatoes, and maybe they sell some charcoal or something else, because everybody cooks on charcoal. Most people don't have stoves. So most of the city lost their income. Well, if you don't have any income and you live from day to day, you're going to starve. And so after I got back, I kept thinking, I need to go see Mr. David. I need to go see Mr. David. And finally, I'm like, okay, Lord, you reminded me to go see him enough. I'll go see him. So one day I drove out of my way to go over to where he lived and knocked on their door. And, well, they don't have a door, but they have a piece of cloth. So I knocked on the side, and he came and answered, and he was long hair, unshaven, and so incredibly thin, I hardly recognized him. And so I said, what is going on? And he said, Madame, how can I eat when my children are hungry? I cannot eat when my children are hungry. And so I'm like, where's your wife? And he said, she's looking for food for dinner for tonight. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I said, where are the girls? He has 5 of the cutest little girls. They're with my wife. And so I went immediately to the store and bought them a chicken and some mealie meal. Mealie meal is corn meal that's ground a little bit finer than ours that we would buy in the store. And then they make this thick porridge out of it, and they eat that 3 meals a day, kind of like bread. And they call it nshima. And so I went and I bought mealie meal and a chicken and some vegetables so that they could probably eat off of that for 3 or 4 days, you know. And on the way home, I'm just weeping in my car and saying, Lord, what can we do? How do we make an impact in this huge, huge crisis. And so I posted on Facebook, please pray for Lusaka. People are dying from cholera. Please pray for us. And my home church, Othello, in fact, I've been staying with Pastor Bob and Kathy Loon this whole time I've been home. I was supposed to tell you guys hi. That my home church said, what can we do? And I said, I have no idea. I don't know what you can do. And so they took an offering and they sent me $1,000. Well, now I have $1,000. I don't know what to do with it. I don't even know where to start. And so I posted on Facebook, thank you to my church, my home church, for sending funds to help with the cholera situation. But inside I'm thinking, I have no idea what to do with this. So then I have some wealthy friends in Oklahoma, and they sent me like another $4,000. Well, now I have $5,000 that I still don't know what to do with. So I went to our district superintendent and our NCM, Nazarene Compassionate Ministries guy, and the two pastors and we were talking, and we finally decided, so what we did was we contacted all the Nazarene churches, especially in the cholera hit areas, and we went and we asked them to have 4 or 5 of their members come, and we wanted to interview them. So 4 or 5 of their members who were the worst hit by cholera, either by death, loss of income, or by sickness. And so we came as though we were interviewing them, and you could tell they were like, oh, brother, you know. So they were answering our questions. How many's in your family? How many children do you care for outside of your own? What is your situation, your income? How did you lose your income? Are you still able to sell anything? Do you pay rent? And then the ones that didn't pay rent, we gave them 500 kwacha, which is like $50. And the ones who did not have to pay rent, we would give them 400 kwacha. Many people started crying. One lady said, please, may I go? I need to go buy mealie meal. And we said, of course, you know, and she said, my children haven't eaten for 3 days. And so she wanted to take that money and run quick and buy something and go and cook for her children and feed them. Others said some will be for food and some we will save to start a new inventory so we can start selling again somewhere else where the government won't see us. In fact, pretty much all the streets that were totally closed by vendors have all built back up again this year. I don't know if they're going to take them out again this year when cholera happens or not. But so a lot of that money went towards giving these people, 400, 500, 600 kwacha. And I still had a little over 1,000 left. And so all year I've been looking and trying to see what to do with it. And so I'm passing around a water filter. So I have bought like about $500 worth of these filters that I'm going to take back with me this year. And I met with the pastors of these areas before I left, and they are getting large containers, and they're going to have them filled, and then we will put 3 filters on each container, and people can come there and get clean water. We're going to have to do training on how to use the filters when I get back, and we're also going to be training on how to make sure you're putting clean water in clean utensils or clean buckets, because what is the point? If you wash it in cholera water and fill it, it's still going to be sick. So there's a lot I'm going to have to do when I get home, but I'm hoping that the churches can use this as an outreach program to their communities. And I've warned all the pastors, if I find out you are selling water, I will come take my filters back. So we'll see how it goes, because everybody's trying to make a buck over there. You can keep going. This young man that I'm pictured with here, he actually had cholera. When the people had cholera, they were so overwhelmed in the hospital, so they opened up the soccer stadium, and all the people with cholera were treated at the soccer stadium, which meant there was 1 or 2 doctors and maybe a nurse there for thousands of people just left there. When you're in the hospital there, your family brings you food, they bring your linens, they bring you blankets. Sometimes they bring you a mattress because hospitals don't have that kind of stuff. So this young man had been at the stadium for over 2 weeks before he got to come home. And we made it a point of hugging him, having our pictures taken with him outside, because if you've had cholera, you're shunned from the community. And we wanted everybody to see that we were not afraid of him, because the government comes in and sprays down your whole house, and so your house is probably more protected than anybody else's. So we also prayed with the ladies. Many of these ladies have 5, 6, 7 children, and maybe only 2 or 3 are theirs, but they're raising other people's children who have died. Their sister died, their brother died, because HIV is very prevalent there. Okay, you can move on. This is one of the little grandmas receiving her money. To show gratitude there, you kneel down before the person. I tried it once and I couldn't get back up, so I haven't done that again. These are some of the ladies, sweet, sweet ladies. They were so grateful. We did also give to a few men, not a lot. There were a few that came. This is Mosiotunya, which is what the Africans call it, which is Victoria Falls. And if you come and stay with me, and I have an extra bedroom, so if you come, I will take you to the falls. I make several trips there every year, taking work and witness teams, taking people who come. These aerial views I stole off Facebook. I didn't fly up there, but you can see that it is definitely one of the 7 wonders of the world. And if you come in December, like my poor mother did, you get to see canyon walls and very little water. She was so excited to see the falls, and there just was hardly any water. I felt bad for her. I kept showing my camera. See, Mom, right here, this is what you would see if there was water. You can see, like, the difference in the pictures even of different times I've been there. Sometimes there's so much water you can hardly see, and you get absolutely soaked because of the mist. And other times it's not like that. There's also a large bridge that connects Zambia to Zimbabwe, and you can bungee jump, you can zip line, they'll drop you down and you can swing. Haven't done that either. It's, I think, $200 to do any of those things, so, and I don't want to anyway. This is when there's not quite so much water. You can see that there's a little bit less water, and I don't remember which year this is from. This is our Bible college in Malawi. This year we graduated more students than we have ever graduated in all the years it's been open. We also have a couple from Salem, Oregon, who are long-term volunteer missionaries like I am, who are now staying right beside the college, and they're working with the college, and they brought several work and witness teams, and they're rebuilding the dorms, and they're really making things be nice again for the dorm. This is Chola, the guy on the end. He is now pastoring a church in Zambia. Nice kid. He has a fun brother, too, that actually goes to Woodlands Church, where I go. So Reverend Paul is in the back, smiling in the white, and this is his son-in-law, Prosper, that graduated this year. Reverend Paul is my boss. He's the one I work for. We work together every day. Reverend Paul Mtambo. It's M-T-A-M-B-O, but it's not pronounced Mtambo, it's Mtambo, like Nchima. This is Lake Malawi. When I go every year, I get to go a few days early because I have to take the extension students. So then I have 3 days with really nothing to do. And usually 1 or 2 of those days, I'll drive over to Lake Malawi, which is about 3 hours away. It's the closest thing to being to the beach that you can get. There's waves and everything, so it's kind of cool. We had 2 general superintendents come in November to do our ordination. So we were quite blessed to have 2 general superintendents. And we had people from Malawi, I don't think any from Zimbabwe, Malawi and Zambia that were ordained. And my mom was still there, and we all went out to dinner together with some of the crew afterwards. When I was with Gary and Penny, I got to go to the regional office in Johannesburg. I've never been there before, so this is the rug. I thought it was cool. This lady in the red is one of our Zimbabwean district superintendents. Her husband died of a heart attack last year. And her region, her group, voted that she would be their next district superintendent because she knew everything about it anyway. And so it's really kind of fun that we now have a woman who's a regional district superintendent. Every month, I try to at least twice a month have all the youth at my church over for a fun night at Auntie Grace's house. We just do silly things that youth do, you know. I was asked to speak at a women's conference. This is Mike Lelema. He got this award, and it's the only time it's ever been given out in Africa. So we were really excited that somebody in our field was receiving this award. This is my pastor and his wife. This is Reverend Paul and his wife, my boss. And then Chisomo and his wife are our youth pastors. This is a conference that we had. You can see Reverend Gary's little white face in the back. He's the missionary there. We had this lady, she came from one of your Nazarene colleges back east, I forget which one. She and her family came, and those are her kids there. We got to go out to this place where you can pet the baby elephants. And I got to host them for a whole week. It was really fun. This is one of our work and witness teams. They were putting in sidewalks at the conference center that we've been working on for quite a while now. I think since 2007, they've been working on the conference center. And little by little, we're getting it done. This is another team. It's fun to have teams come and speak American for a week or two. You realize, we do talk different when they're there. That's the swing you can go on at Livingstone if you want. Work and witness girls love that kind of stuff. This is some of our kiddos, sweet kids. They swarm you. They all want to touch you, especially your hair. And they love for pictures. If you take pictures, then they want to look on your phone, and then they laugh, and they love having pictures of themselves. So every once in a while, I'll get somebody's picture developed, and then I go back and I take them their developed pictures, and they're just in awe that they have a picture of themselves or of their child, which normally they would never ever have that. So they tie their children to their back with a shitenge, which is just a piece of cloth. They also, when they carry something on their head, they will roll the shitenge into a rope to make a base to put something on their head. If you want to sit on the ground, the shitenge goes on the ground and you can sit on it. If you're cold, you can cover up with it. Works for lots and lots of things. And this material is called shitenge material. So shitenge mostly just means cloth, I think. He wanted to drive my car. That little girl, I gave her 5 kwacha, which is about 5 cents. So I could take her picture with that thing on her head. You would have thought I gave her $1 million. Usually babies are not brought out until they're about 3 months old. You don't see them. This little guy was only a week old, so I was really shocked to see he was at church already. And that pretty much wraps up what I was going to say this morning. A few shots of some sunsets. This was at Lake Kariba. I went there 3 years ago for a mini vacation for 4 days. It was no electricity, no internet, nothing. Nobody bothered me. It was awesome. So, does anybody have any questions? I hope while I was talking you were thinking of some questions. I forgot to tell you that in the beginning. Because usually one question will lead to another, which leads to a lot of stories and answers. The filter that I'm passing around, I've looked and looked online. I actually wanted to do this cement filter that you can build, and I was thinking about flying back and taking the class, which was going to cost me $500. But then I found out the molds to make these were $18,000. So I'm like, well, I won't be making that anytime soon. So I found these filters. Now, last week when I was speaking in Othello, a guy who works for Ladd Irrigation came up to me and said, I can get those filters for you even cheaper, and I can get you better filters than those. So we're supposed to touch base yesterday, but that didn't work out. So next week I'm hoping to touch base with him and find out what filters he's talking about. But these are the filters that I want to put in the side of the tanks to filter water. The idea behind these filters is the same as when you have kidney dialysis. So these filters came from a guy who worked with the kidney dialysis filters, and that's how he made these filters. And they're very simple because you can backwash them, and they're good for thousands of gallons of water. So that's what I found. If anybody knows more than that than me, I'd be glad to know. I will be next week at the Mix, and then after the Mix, I'm going to Spokane for 2 weeks, and I'm going to stay with I have a son in Spokane. And then I will fly from Spokane to Charleston for a week with my son and my grandkids in Charleston, and then I will be back in Lusaka on November 1st. So every year I come home for about 7 weeks, and next year I'm going to come a little bit longer than that, probably extra 3 weeks, because my daughter is getting married next year. So I'm going to come and do mom things. So, any other questions? No. Just my mom. My kids, my kids are working full time, and their idea of a vacation is not going to Africa. So they want to go to, I don't know, Hawaii or someplace cool, not Africa. So. Yes.
I know the Father provides.
You know what?
The Father provides, but it also makes me take a breath in for you, thinking that you are there and it's only in faith and you're working. So there, you know that you don't have a constant, but like it's, or is it challenging?
It can be. This year in June, I was so depressed and overwhelmed, I almost came home. I was like, I'm a volunteer. I can go anytime I want. I'm done. And sleeping 14 hours straight made me change my mind. Because I'm one of those people, I have a hard time saying no. And so I had way overcommitted myself. And I was taking care of a work and witness team, which is a lot of work when teams come. And something happened, and something else happened, and then there was this big thing, and by the time that work and witness team left on Friday morning, and the second one came in on Friday afternoon, by about Monday, I'm into my third or fourth week of 4 to 6 hours sleep every night. I just got wiped out, and I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore, But.
And for different reasons, I understand.
Yeah.
For different reasons. But,
when I look back on how I left, and now I think I'm crazy. But when I left, it seemed totally logical to sell my house, my car, and everything I owned, and quit the first good job I had that had retirement, and go to Africa. It seemed totally fine. Of course, yes, that's what I'm doing. Now I think, wow, that was kind of scary. Why did you do that? But I tell my kids I did them a huge favor, because when I get older, they don't have to come to my house and sort through piles and piles, because it's all gone. And when I come back from Africa, I will come back with 3 suitcases, and I will have to start all over again. So I was raised an Army kid, and I used to say, when I get married, I'm going to move into my house, and I am never going to leave that house again. And I can't even tell you how many times I've moved in my lifetime. And now I got rid of great-grandma's hutch and great-great-grandma's this, and everything's gone. So it's interesting where God will take you if you let him lead you. And you're never too old to be led by God into a situation. You're never too old to love your neighbor as yourself. You're never too old to make friends with a non-Christian. I go into churches and I find people who only associate with Christians, and they go to Monday morning Bible study and Wednesday night Bible study and Thursday morning fellowship, and that's it. And you ask them, do you have any non-Christians? Well, my family member is not a Christian. I'm not talking about family members. I'm talking about non-Christians. Do we love the lost? Do we reach out to the lost? I know before I left, I never did. I was scared of them all, Oh, you don't go to church anywhere? It's not you don't go to church. It's, do you know God? Do you have a personal relationship with the Lord? My son said to me, Mom, I'm never going to church again the rest of my life. None of my 5 kids are saved. And I said, that's okay with me. I don't care if you never go again. And he said, really? I'm shocked you would say that. And I said, I don't care if you ever go to church. I care about if you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and you know him as your Savior and Lord, and you talk to him every day. Whether or not you go to church is up to you. And he was like, wow, Mom, I think you're becoming a spiritual person. And I'm like, oh, thanks, But that's where the rubber meets the road. We were all called to the Great Commission. None of us is exempt. That's what we were called to do. So when you go and get your coffee in the morning, do you say to the gal, thank you so much, God bless you, put in a tip? Or do you say, thanks for the coffee, man, I have a heavy day ahead of me, and drive away? What do we portray? Do we portray the joy of the Lord and the peace of God? Or do we portray, I am so overwhelmed that I'm packing up my stuff and I'm going home because I don't have to do this anymore? I mean, that's where I was in June. But we have to, as Christians, we have to examine our lifestyle. Is it a testimony to those around us? Is it a testimony to the lost? Do we have a heart for the lost? Or do we judge them? Somebody said to me, how can you let your kids do that? And I said, my kids don't know God. Why would I demand them to act in a certain way when they don't even know who he is? Why would I ask them to act like a Christian and not swear in front of me? They don't know him. So why would I do that? That would be religious towards them. That would not be loving them where they are, or at least that's what I think. But I'm not a pastor, so I don't know. Any other questions? Yes? The persecution in South Africa? Well, it's a big secret, and it's not making the news, but the persecution in South Africa is rising rapidly. There are lots and lots of white farmers, small white farmers in South Africa that are being massacred. You don't hear anything about it over here. You really don't hear much about it over there. But it is happening, and it is on the rise. The current president said, we will take back the land from the white farmers and give it to the blacks. But the problem is most of the blacks have never been taught how to farm. And so you have people, white farmers, who have farmed for years and years. A lot of them are Dutch, and they have farmed for years and generations there. But, they've never bothered to teach or give instruction to, and so, along comes a warring team. We're taking your farm. They torture the family, kill them all. And then the top guy says to this guy, this is now your farm. This is your house, your farm. Well, that guy never lived in that kind of a house. He doesn't even know how to take care of that house, much less how to run equipment, much less how to farm, when to farm, how to harvest, nothing. So what I'm seeing long term is that we're going to have starvation mass, because most of the food for all of Africa comes from South Africa. South Africa ships food. When I go to the grocery store, everything says from South Africa. So if South Africa collapses, it's going to be huge ramifications for the other smaller countries. But I don't know about that stuff either, so maybe I'm just talking off the top of my head. Any other questions? How what? It's not cold. It's fairly warm. It's not like like going to the Pacific Ocean. It's not like that. So, yeah, it's not bad. The first time I went, I thought, I don't need one of those silly raincoats. I can manage just fine. And so then when I came back, I mean, I was like I had been underwater for 20 minutes, you know, and so now I rent the silly raincoats when I go, because even those, they leak, you know, so you're still wet. And I learned the hard way, don't take your phone or your purse or your passport to the falls because they get ruined when there's that heavy, heavy mist. So I had to buy a new phone. I was not happy about that. Anybody else? Going once, going twice?
Hey, I gotta say 3 things. Am I on here? Am I loud enough? 3 things. You hold that. Away from me, apparently. She says she's not a preacher. Anybody agree with her? Clearly, you're a preacher, right? Okay, so I didn't even have to be coming up here. Second thing, I learned from my daughter, your daughters and sons won't visit you because they have their grandkids, and they know that you'll visit them because they have the grandkids.
Well, I only have one with grandkids. Nobody else.
And you will visit them no matter what, right? They know this. They know this. They're evil. Anyway, third thing, I really wrestled with this, how to do the offering, and I'm probably going to make the counters really mad, but I want to do another love offering. I want to pass that again. You've listened to her. You've heard her heart. You've heard what she's doing, and I just felt God saying, you know what? You didn't really give the people an opportunity to support Grace and what she's doing right now. So ushers, if you would very quickly do that. Mike Hackworth is going to come on down here. Would you give her a round of applause? Just a thank you so much for being here. And again, we're going to take a love offering. Hopefully you do whatever you want with it. You know what to do with it. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And now I'll take,
One more thing. If you want to support me monthly, I have some papers out there. If you want to have it tax deductible, you must address your checks to General Treasurer, and then down at the note on the bottom, you put Zambia, Grace Shelby, and then you will get a tax deduction. And your church also gets credit for supporting missionaries that way too, so that's kind of nice.
Would you like to pray?
Sure. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this opportunity to share this morning about what you're doing in Africa. Amongst your people in Africa, our brothers and our sisters. Father, I pray that you would bless each person here this morning who had ears to hear, that they would be able to begin to reach out to their brothers and their sisters, even their non-Christian friends in this community, that they would have a renewed interest in reaching and saving the lost. Father, I pray a blessing over this body, over this congregation. I pray, Lord, that you would multiply and multiply until every pew is filled. Lord, I ask that you would put a fresh anointing over this fellowship. And I ask that you would be with this offering. In your name, amen.